day, beautiful people. I'm trying to dry this little spot off that I just wiped off on this table. To the baby. Take care, hey. Make sure my boot don't get stuck. Should have got something dried out. I like it. It ain't dried too good. Top of the day, beautiful people. I know I'm running behind. Sorry for retarding this today. Okay, let's get started. Anyway, happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Auntie. Hold on. What is going on with my screen? Brightness. Oh. There we go. Okay, there we go. Belinda Brown, Grand Rising. Shayla, hey girl, hey, Great Rising. Mom, shalom, shalom. Marie, Betswabu, yes, baby girl.
I think that's my cereal.
Yeah, Tootie. Go ahead. All right, beautiful people. Happy Wednesday, happy Wednesday. It is January the 26th, 2022. Day number 14 of year 4 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets and of the 4-year consecutive day count, day 1032. Today, y'all, we're going to read Genesis 40 through 42, and then we're going to pick up in my big toe in chapter 13. But also, today, yes, baby girl. What? Open it up, let me see. I can't see. Is what? I need you to open it this way. Open this. Push this open so I can see what you're talking about. No, push so I can see what you're talking about, girl. Oh, that's Dad's. Leave it alone. That's his cheesecake. I know I'm running a few minutes behind today, but there was a question. I forget who it was. Maybe it was Marie. Maybe, I don't know. Somebody asked me the other day. Everybody randomly, every now and again, this question will pop up. Maybe it was Marie. Marie, let me know. Maybe it was Audrey. I'm not sure. But they asked and it could have been somebody else that popped in. They asked, why was Abel's sacrifice accepted and Cain's wasn't, right? Abel was, it says that in Genesis that Abel was he tended to the sheep and stuff. And then Cain, he had the garden. So I make sure I don't get the names mixed up. Hold on, I'm trying to look at it. It was, yeah. It says that Abel gave a sacrifice of animal, the best of his flock, his herds. And then Cain had given the first fruits of the fruits of the land or whatever. But anyway, he was pissed because Abel's got accepted and his didn't. I'm going to read you something translated from the ancient Sumerian text that gives us a little bit more detail. And I'm like, you know what? They could have done worded this a little bit better than this. And nobody would ever had this question. Very interesting. Nikki, good day, good day. Uncle Nathaniel, good day, good day. Okay, so let's do this. Let's do this peaceful greetings. All right, let's see. Try to move a little fast, but not too fast, but I definitely want to read that. Marie, was that you that asked that question, or was it somebody else that popped in? I wanted to go back to the video because I couldn't remember if it was yesterday's video or day before yesterday, or the last day was here because it wasn't here on Monday. Was it you, or was it somebody else that asked the question?
Mom,
yes, Tootie.
that.
I did. I took it out. Robert, Betswabu.
Oh, wait.
I want to make sure I said the right person's name who said it so I can make sure they hear. I didn't already told y'all about it. I'm going to read it anyway. But just so
Mom,
when a person pop in, I can direct them, hey, go back to this part of the video.
Mom,
listen to this. Yes.
about.
No, nobody ate it. It just split all in half. Yeah, when I was taking it out the pan, it split all in half, Tootie. We'll discuss it.
Why is this too heavy?
No, that other one is too heavy. Linda, shalom.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
No, this is not.
Okay. Not you? It wasn't you? Okay, Audrey, was it you? They asked the other day, why was Abel's sacrifice accepted and Cain's wasn't? I'm trying to get my names right, y'all. Somebody asked, like I said, I didn't go back, but doing the video, and I think it was while I was talking about the ancient Sumerian text. I think it was that video, the very first day I talked about it. Audrey, was it you? No? Darn it. It was somebody. I got to go back because I think a couple new people had come in that day. Okay. So I got to go back and I'm going to look. It was you, MP. Oh, thank you. It was you. Okay. All right. So I'm glad you're here. Okay. Okay. So you heard what I said. Okay. So I'm going to read it. All right. Let's get started with the this Shema. This is real good, y'all. It's really good. This is filling in some details, and I found it in this one. Almost got this man whole library now going through the translated text. This is the one, Divine Encounters, and it starts on page 38. Let me do the Shema, and maybe I'll read that first before we read Genesis. Okay. A call for wholehearted commitment. These are the commands, decrees, and regulations that the Lord your God commanded me to teach you. You must obey them in the land you are about to enter and occupy, and you and your children and grandchildren must fear the Lord your God as long as you live. If you obey all his decrees and commands, you will enjoy a long life. Listen closely, Israel, and be careful to obey. Then all will go well with you, and you will have many children in the land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, promised you. Listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. And you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I am giving you today. Kira, come here. For you busted all over the floor. Come here. Give it here. I'm sorry, y'all. And you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I'm giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you're at home and when you're on the road, when you're going to bed, and when you're getting up. Tie them to your hands and wear them on your forehead as reminders. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. The Lord your God will soon bring you into the land he swore to give to you when he made a vow to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It is a land with large, prosperous cities that you did not build. The houses will be richly stocked with goods that you did not produce. You will draw water from cisterns you did not dig, and you will eat from vineyards and olive trees you did not plant. When you have eaten your fill in this land, be careful not to forget the Lord who rescued you from slavery in the land of Egypt. You must fear the Lord your God and serve him. When you take an oath, you must use his name. You must not worship any of the gods of the neighboring nations, for the Lord your God who lives among you is a jealous God. His anger will flare up against you, and he will wipe you from the face of the earth. You must not test Yahuwah your God as you did when you complained at Massa. You must diligently obey the commands of the Lord your God, all the laws and decrees he has given you. Do what is right and good in the Lord's sight, so all will go well with you, and then you will enter and occupy the good land that the Lord swore to give to your ancestors. You will drive out all the enemies living in the land, just as the Lord said you would. In the future, your children will ask you, what is the meaning of these laws, decrees, and regulations that the Lord our God has commanded us to obey? Then you must tell them, we were Pharaoh's slaves in Egypt, but the Lord brought us out of Egypt with his strong hand. The Lord did miraculous signs and wonders before our eyes, dealing terrifying blows against Egypt, Pharaoh, and all his people. He brought us out of Egypt so he could give us this land he had sworn to give to our ancestors. And the Lord our God commanded us to obey all these decrees and to fear him so that he can continue to bless us and preserve our lives as he has done to this day. For we will be counted as righteous when we obey all the commands the Lord our God has given us. All right, beautiful people. Uncle JB, shalom. Okay, Yahuwah is one. Oh, great spirit, fill us and guide us. Hallelujah. Okay, look, so listen. Let me just go here. I was going to wait till I'm done, but I'm just going to read it now because I'm super excited about it. Hold on. It's filling in a portion that we already read, so I think it's appropriate before we read on a little bit further in Genesis 40. Okay, so I found it in Divine Encounters. This is a guide to visions, angels, and other emissaries. And so this is talking about some of the angelic encounters in the Bible and kind of filling you in on some of the backstories of what's going on, right? And bringing out things that seem kind of off. with what they had given you. And clearly, if we reading through it now, like I said before, it's like, there, it's still some strange going on in the Old Testament. Some things are just not being explained fully, right? And you can tell when the tone changes. Okay, look, so I'm gonna just hop right to it. So on page 30, let me say, y'all, I'm gonna just go ahead and tell y'all, I'm late because I overslept, because I was up so late reading and going through stuff. I set my clock for 6. I was like, we're just gonna do it a little bit later. I'm gonna get up at 6. I set the clock for 6. I heard it go off in my dreams, and I hit it and fell back to sleep. And yeah, and that was all she wrote. And that's why I'm late. Okay, so on page 38 of this, hold on. Right here, yeah, okay. Reading the biblical and extra biblical records in light of Sumerian sources will greatly add to our understanding of those prehistoric events. We have already examined. Yes, baby girl. Okay. Hold on. Let's do this. Now look at my ass. Yo,
Thank you, Mommy.
they is it when your prophecy is read. Okay, I can't get that song out of my head. In Kanto. All right, listen. Okay. We have already examined such sources in respect to the tale of the creation of the Adam and Eve. Of the Adam and of Eve and the Garden of Eden. That was like this whole first 38 pages getting into the details of that. We'll come back to that because we're going to get into it when we read through the whatchamacallit in a few days. But I just had to bring this out. Hey, turn it down a little bit. We have already examined such sources in respect to the tale of the creation of the Adam and of Eve and the Garden of Eden. Let us now examine the Cain-Abel tragedy. Why did the two feel obliged to offer the first fruits or yearlings to Yahweh? And we're going to get into that, the name Yahweh and all that stuff, right? But just pay attention to this little story. Why did the two feel obliged to offer the first fruits or yearlings to Yahweh? Why did he pay heed only to the offering of Abel, the shepherd? And why did the Lord then rush to appease Cain by promising him that he, Cain, would rule over Abel? The answers lie in a realization that, as in the tale of creation, the biblical version compresses more than one Sumerian deity into a single monotheistic one. Sumerian texts include 2 that deal with disputes and conflicts between farming and shepherding. They both hold the key to an understanding of what had happened by going back to a time before the domestication of either grains or cattle, a time when grains had not yet been brought forth and had not yet vegetated, when the lamb had not yet been dropped. There was no she-goat. But the black-headed people, and it's going to explain who the black-headed people were at creation, my G. But the black-headed people had already been fashioned and placed in Eden. And Eden spelled here is E-D-I-N. It's going to bring the differentiation earlier, but I think it's also talked about in what we're going to read as well. So I won't get into all of that. I just want to point that out for now. But the black-headed people had already been fashioned and placed in Eden, so the Anunnaki decided to give Namlu Galu, civilized mankind, the knowledge of and tools for the tilling of the land and the keeping of the sheep, not, however, for the sake of mankind, but for the sake of the gods, to assure their satiation. And remember, Anunnaki, yes.
Look, you have to break you have to break that. That.
Go ahead.
Okay. Look, you can break that down, and guess what?
What?
And I opened it. It's too hard.
Okay, don't worry about it. We'll fix it. Okay, so remember, Anunnaki or Anunnaki is those who came from heaven, right? That's what they call them. Those who came from heaven. Oh, the Anunnaki. Those who came from heaven, right? Okay. It's going to get into that too, but just for the sake of it, because the name out. Oh, there you go, get into the space crap. It simply means those who came from heaven, which the Bible talks about and call angels or the sons of God. Yes. Okay, sweet. Okay, look, Carol, listen, look. I'm already running behind. All right, go ahead. Good. Okay. But the black-headed people had already been fashioned and placed in Eden, so the Anunnaki decided to give to Namlu Galu civilized mankind the knowledge of and Bella, go through there. Take it through there. All the way through there. The knowledge of and tools for the tilling of the land and the keeping of the sheep, not, however, for the sake of mankind, but for the sake of the gods, to assure their satiation. The task of bringing forth the two forms of domestication fell to Enki and Enlil. They went to the Duku, D-U.Ku. They went to the Duku, the purification place, the creation chamber of the gods, and brought forth Lahor, which means woolly cattle, and Anshan, which means grains. For Lahor, they set up a sheepfold. To Anshan, a plow and yoke they presented. Sumerian cylinder seals depicted the presentation of the first ever plow to mankind, and it says, look at figure 13a, which is, you may not be able to see it because it's so small, but hold on. Right there, I'm showing it to Facebook first. I'm not sure if you two can see it, but the top picture, that's the presentation of them giving the plow and stuff for the first time to the humans that they had just created. Can you see it? I know it's real small, so you have to maybe like screenshot it, then blow it up and look at it. But when you look at it, you can clearly see what's going on in the picture. Okay. Hold on. Sumerian cylinder seals depicted the presentation of the first ever plow to mankind, figure 13a, presumably by Enlil, who had created Anshan, the farmer, although a presentation by Enlil's son, Ninurta, who was nicknamed the plowman, should not be ruled out, and the plowing scene in which the plow is pulled by a bull, figure 13b, which is the figure right under it. You can probably see that a little bit better because there's not so much going on in that picture. Facebook. Okay, up here, YouTube. Okay. After an initial idyllic period, Lahar and Anshan began to quarrel. That was the names in the Sumerian text, not Cain and Abel, right? After an initial idyllic period, Lahar and Anshan began to quarrel. The text named by the scholars, the myth of cattle and grain, reveals that in spite of the effort to separate the two by establishing a house, a settled way of life, for Anshan, the farmer, and putting up sheepfolds in the grazing lands for Lahar, the shepherd, and in spite of the abundant crops and bountiful sheepfolds, the two began to quarrel. The quarrel began as the two offered those abundances to the storehouse of the gods. At first, each just extolled his own achievements and belittled those of the other. But the argument became so volatile that both Enlil and Enki had to intervene. According to the Sumerian text, they declared Anshan, the farmer, the more surpassing, which would be Cain. Is it Cain? Cain. Yeah. The farmer. Cain. Yeah. Okay. I had to make sure I was getting them right. According to the Sumerian text, they declared Anshan, the farmer, the more surpassing. More explicit in its choice between the two food producers and two ways of life is a text known as the dispute between Imesh and Enten, in which the two come to Enlil for a decision as to who of them is the more important. Emesh is the one who made wide stalls and sheepfolds, or Abel, which is the one who tended the sheep. I want to make sure I keep it straight. Yeah, okay. So that would be Abel. The dispute between Emesh and Enten, in which the two come to Enlil for a decision as to who of them is more important. Emesh is the one who made wide stalls and sheepfolds. Enten, who dug canals to water the lands, which would be Cain. No, did I say that right? Yeah, Cain. Enten, who dug canals to water the lands, asserts that he is the farmer of the gods. Bringing their offerings to Enlil, each seek to be granted primacy. Eten boasts of how he made farm touch farm. His irrigation canals brought water in abundance. How he made grain increase in the furrows and be heaped high in the granaries. Emesh points out that he made the ewe give birth to the lamb, the goat to give birth to the kid, cow and calf to multiply, fat and milk to increase, and also how he obtained eggs from nests made from birds and caught fish from the sea. But Enlil rejects the pleas of Emesh, even reprimands him. How could you compare yourself to your brother Enten? He tells him, for it is Enten who is in charge of the life-producing waters of all the lands, and water spells life, growth, abundance. Emesh accepts the decision, and in quotes is a portion from it. The exalted word of Enlil, whose meaning is profound, a verdict that is unalterable, no one dares to transgress it. And so in the dispute between Emesh and Enten, or Cain and Abel, Enten, the faithful farmer of the gods, having proved himself the winner, Emesh, his knee bent before Enten, or Cain, his knee bent before Abel, offered him a prayer and gave him many presents. It is noteworthy that in the above quoted lines, Enlil calls Emesh a brother of Enten, the same relationship that is between Cain and Abel. This and other similarities between the Sumerian and biblical tales indicate that the former were the inspiration for the latter. The preference of the farmer over the shepherd by Enlil can be traced to the fact that he was the one to introduce farming, while Enki accounted for the domestication of livestock. Scholars tend to translate the Sumerian names as winter for Enten and summer for Emesh. Strictly speaking, Enten, or En, meant Lord of resting, the time after the harvest and thus the winter season, without a clear affinity to a specific deity. Emesh, Mesh, which means house of mesh, on the other hand, is clearly associated with Enki, one of whose epithets was mesh, or proliferation. He was thus the god of shepherding. All in all, there can be little doubt that the Cain-Abel rivalry reflected a rivalry between the two divine brothers. It flared up from time to time, as when Enlil arrived on earth to take over the command from Enki, who was relegated to the Abzu. Abzu is the land outside of Eden, right? Not Eden as E-D-E-N, which is what we commonly know it by, is E.D-I-N, Eden, right? Okay. Y'all get it when we start reading. It's going to break all that down really good. Let me read that again. All in all, there can be little doubt that the Cain-Abel rivalry reflected a rival between the two divine brothers. It flared up from time to time, as when Enlil arrived on earth to take over the command from Enki, who was relegated to the Abzu, A-B-Z-U, and on subsequent occasions. Its roots, however, went back to Nibiru, their home planet. Both were the sons of Anu, Nibiru's ruler. Enki was the firstborn and thus the natural heir to the throne. But Enlil, though born later, was born by the official spouse of Anu and presumably a half-sister of his, a fact that made Enlil the legal heir to the throne. Birthright clashed with succession rules, and though Enki accepted the outcome, the rivalry and anger often burst into the open. And so then it goes on a little bit more about Cain and how where his anger actually came from. So as I read this part, I was reminded of what I was reading in the the book of remembrance of Enoch, right? So if you're familiar with that, remember we talked about it months ago, last year, like at the beginning of the year when we was kind of going through it. But it goes in and tells you about when like anger or instruments that could be used as weapons against one another, humankind, when that was introduced. So as it starts getting into this, it says a question rarely asked is, where did Cain obtain the very notion of killing? In the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve were vegetarians, eating only fruits of the trees. No animal was slaughtered by them. Away from the garden, there were only 4 humans, none of whom has yet died, and certainly not as a result of foul play. In such circumstances, what made Cain come upon his brother Abel and kill him? So, but before it actually gets to the answer, it gives you a little bit more detail about what was going on. And I thought that was really good, so we may actually come back and read all of this later. It depends, but if you want to get it, this is what it is: Divine Encounters by Zechariah Sitchin. That's how his name is spelled: Zecharia Sitchin, Sitchin, right? So that and a whole bunch of other stuff is in here. So when I read that, I remembered the question. MP, now I know it was you. You're welcome. She said, thank you. You know what? Let me ask this. Because I can't tell. MP, I can't tell if you're male or female. And I just said she. And I don't want to be wrong if you're he. So you're welcome. Can I ask? Male or female? Is that improper to ask? Hope it's not improper to ask. Forgive me if it is. But sometimes I can't tell by the screen names. So, but you don't have to answer if you don't want to. I just say MP. So what MP asked, when I was reading across this last night, I was like, I got to share this with them. So I hope that brings a little bit more detail to the Cain and Abel story, right? So remember that it makes sense now. I probably should have read that too, about the us, let us. Because you remember my video, like the last couple years, they was like, okay, well, who was us in the beginning? It was like, okay. So the way I understood it, which still lines up to what I'm reading in the Sumerian text, because if you read over in Jasher, it lets you know who the us was. It was the other angels that were present, right? Because remember, man was the last thing that was created in the garden, right? And everything else was like a culmination of what had already been done. And so we know who was talking, right? And so the us is a compilation of the gods who were present, right? The angels, what it tells us in Jasher, the angels. Matter of fact, I think it's Jubilee. No, I'm sorry. It's Jubilees. It's like the first 3 chapters are Jubilees, but it is some of it in Jasher at the very beginning. But it's Jubilees. It's like the first 3 chapters when it goes into detail, when it's also talking about the Sabbath. So when I read this, I was like, okay, yeah, I was still on point. I kind of heard that right still, right? But at that point, before we even came across the Sumerian text, I realized the us was also the angels that were present as well, right? Clearly, those who came from heaven, Anunnaki, however you want to term it, right? So that's that. So I wanted to read that to you. So there was a little bit more going on. It wasn't that they were, I guess you can say they were offering because they were tilling the land, right? Abel was in charge of the sheepfold. So he was a shepherd, right? He was shepherding for the gods or whatever. And I forget that quick. It was Enlil and Enki. Let me look at it real quick. Enlil was we'll look at it like department heads. Hold on. Enlil, who had created Anshan, the farmer. Okay, so Enlil was in charge of the farmlands and the fruit from the ground. So, yeah. So, what Cain was the farmer. Yeah. Yeah, Cain was the wait, am I saying that right? The animals. Yeah. Yeah. Enlil. So it would be Enlil, and Cain was the farmer. And then Abel was a shepherd, which would be Enki. Enki was the head of the department of the animals. I'm still getting the names mixed up, y'all. Hold on. Let me make sure I got that right. Yeah, okay. Enlil was over the farming and the crops from the ground, and Enki was over the livestock, which Abel, yeah, Abel was in that department. Okay. Everything, I'm trying to still bring it together, getting the names mixed up. They run together sometime. But anyway, all natural. Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for answering. Okay, so now when I refer, because some people have their preferences. Just call me by the name you see. So I just thank you for answering. Okay. Okay, girl. Okay. Okay, y'all. So let's go. Hold on. Obedience. Here I say, didn't it say in the legends of the Jews that the angels were created after man so they wouldn't get credit for creating man? I don't remember reading that. I could be wrong. Hold on. I don't. I'm gonna have to go back. Give me the page number. I could be wrong. Give me the page number, obedience, y'all. I'm gonna have to go back and check that. Clearly, it would be all the way in the beginning. I don't remember reading that, or maybe I just don't remember reading it, and maybe it could. I don't know. I'm gonna have to go back and check it. But if you got the page number, put it up here and I'll go back and read it. Yeah, but as far as I know, man was created last. But we're going to get into a little bit of detail about exactly how that happened. But also, listen, and I haven't seen this person in a minute, but not to be, it could have been the beginning of last year. What's his name? Okay, I haven't seen him in a while, but I was telling y'all about a book that me and my husband had gotten, right? And it had some information in it about when man was created, right? So, but some of the information, I was like, I'm not going to quite share the name of the reference with you yet because I haven't gone all the way through it, and there were some things in there that seemed kind of suspect to me. But it was giving more detail. At the time, the information that was suspect to me was the creation of man, which was giving me the feels of the Sumerian text. I'm like, what? No, that can't be. That ain't what the Bible say. That ain't what Enoch say. But it was giving a little more detail, which is lining up with the Sumerian text. And now I'm like, holy crap. I hadn't had this all this time. And I put it down because I thought it was heresy, right? I was like, why we even ordered it? We ordered it because another version of the book of Enoch was in it. It was comprised within it, and like the more information about the Watchers and the giants and like the wars that was going on. So when I started coming across it, and this was a year ago, y'all, we could have been in the Sumerian text like a year ago. But when I was looking, I was like, oh no, that ain't what the Bible say. This is who wrote this. Yeah, this is the book of Enoch, but what is all this stuff? I ain't familiar with this. And I just kind of grazed through it. But it was information there about how the humans, like details about how the humans were actually created. I'm like, that seems interesting. I'm like, and if that is true, that would be amazing. But I'm like, yeah, the Bible don't say nothing about that. So just go ahead and close that. And I had started talking about it like the day I had started talking about it, the next day is when I started looking over a little bit further in the book and found that information, because I said that I'm going to share this with y'all. Then I was like, hold up. I'm not going to share it just yet because I don't want to throw nobody off. And I came across some information that's inside of it that I'm not quite sure of just yet. Now, I can vouch for the book of Enoch in it, but some of the other stuff in there, I was like, so I'm going to hold off on sharing that particular reference with you, right? So, but that person, like I said, I haven't seen them in a while. They may come in and out. Their schedule may have changed. But they asked a couple times, can you please share that reference? I was like, I ain't going to share with y'all yet because of this. But now that I done read the Sumerian text, I thought about early last year when I had mentioned it to y'all in that book. I'm like, holy crap. This is what was in there. And it was given, and I forget the name of it, but it's compiled of like the Watchers, the Wars of the Gods, the Book of Enoch. Now I can clearly see why all that was comprised together. It was given translations from the Sumerian text that I was not familiar with, nor was I looking for at the time, nor had I been introduced to it enough yet to where I could even make the links. But it's been here in my house over a year. Boy, I tell you, some things be right on your nose. Okay, my bad. They were created after the first day, so they wouldn't get credit for creating heaven and earth. Okay, cool. Okay, I'm glad we cleared that up, obedient to y'all. Okay, so let's go ahead and read through this. Genesis chapter 40. Joseph interprets 2 dreams. Sometime later, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and chief baker offended their royal master. Pharaoh became angry with these 2 officials, and he put them in the prison where Joseph was, in the place of the captain of the guard. They remained in prison for quite some time, and the captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, who looked after them. But while they were in prison, Joseph's cupbearer and baker each had a dream one night, and each dream had its own meaning. When Joseph saw them the next morning, he noticed they both looked upset. Why do you look so worried today? He asked them. They replied, we both had dreams last night, but no one can tell us what they mean. Interpreting dreams is God's business, Joseph replied. Oh, that's amazing. I ain't even got to that part because it's actually going to be talking about this, but I ain't really got into the details of it yet. But we can come back and talk about it as we move down the line. What was the book? This one? Divine Encounters, a guide to visions, angels, and other emissaries by Zachariah Sincher. And I'll leave I don't think this is on Audible, which is why I got the book. This was only came in a printed version because I if I can get it Audible, I'm gonna listen to it, and I probably would have got way further than page 50 yesterday because I could have let the book play in my ear all day. But I'll leave the links and stuff of what I have to the references, y'all. Okay. Interpreting dreams is God's business, Joseph replied. Go ahead and tell me your dreams. So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream first. In my dream, he said, I saw a grapevine in front of me. The vine had 3 branches that began to bud and blossom, and soon it produced clusters of ripe grapes. I was holding Pharaoh's wine cup in my hand, so I took a cluster of grapes and squeezed the juice into the cup. Then I placed the cup into Pharaoh's hand. This is what the dream means, Joseph said. The 3 branches represent 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift you up and restore you to your position as chief cupbearer. And please remember me and do me a favor when things go well for you. Mention me to Pharaoh so he might let me out of this place. For I was kidnapped from my homeland, the land of the Hebrews, and now I'm here in prison, but I did nothing to deserve it. When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given him the first dream, such a positive interpretation, he said to Joseph, I had a dream too. In my dream, there were 3 baskets of white pastries stacked on my head. The top basket contained all kinds of pastries for Pharaoh, but the birds came and ate them from the basket on my head. This is what the dream means, Joseph told him. The 3 baskets also represent 3 days. 3 days from now, Pharaoh will lift you up and impale your body on a pole. Then the birds will come and peck away at your flesh. Pharaoh's birthday came 3 days later, and he prepared a banquet for all his officials and staff. He summoned his chief cupbearer and chief baker to join the other officials. Then he then restored the chief cupbearer to his former position so he could again hand Pharaoh his cup. But Pharaoh impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had predicted when he interpreted his dream. Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, however, forgot all about Joseph, never giving him another thought. Y'all, that's going to get real good when we start reading. The translation from the Sumerian text is almost like, I feel like I did, you know how, well, all y'all should, right? You know how when you just only read the Bible and then you start questioning some of the other books that the Bible mentioned as written in the Chronicles of the Kings, or as written in, as found in Jasher, like the Jasher, what is the book of Jasher? And so you start that wondering process starts to happen. Is there a book of Jasher? This mentions another book. It said this can be found here. And voila, you find a book of Jasher and it's like, oh, this fills in more of the story, right? I feel like they're all over with the Sumerian text, where it's filling in all the fuzzy places in scripture, right? So I'm not, just in case y'all wondering, I'm not doing away with it. I'm not doing away with scripture, y'all. But what we are doing is we filling in those fuzzy places with more information that we have. Granted, it was all taken and copied from the Sumerian text, right? So we kind of got half-cocked information. So now we're going to fully cock, if that's such a thing. We're going to fully cock the information we got by going to the original source where all the Bible was taken from, and Jasher and all this other stuff, because you can find pieces of all of them in the Sumerian text. So by reading through the Sumerian text, it brings everything in its proper perspective, right? The Bible, Jasher, Jubilees, all of these things. And the big missing picture is the angelic portion, what the Christians would call the angelic portions of it. We can see it happening scattered throughout the biblical text, right? But it was a really big part of the overall text with the angelic activity and the activity of man. So they just kind of cut it down, made it seem like this was, and they changed it into one God all the way through to made it seem like unless he was fighting against somebody else that wasn't lining up to what he was doing, and make it just seem like it was just one. It turns it into a monotheistic God, right? So which makes a whole lot of other things make sense. I ain't telling y'all to go worship multiple gods. That's not what I'm telling y'all. What I'm telling y'all is we filling in a story. We getting all the pieces of the puzzle in its rightful place, so we can make sure that we are worshiping. Like we've been talking about Christians all this time. Like, hold on, G. We need to pull back just a minute. Like, hold on. I'm a little bit discombobulated right now. I need to make sure that I'm worshiping the right God. So while we're pulling the information together, please forgive me if I may say something offensive. My heart is to do what's right. We're just trying to figure this out, right? The Creator shows us a lot more leniency while we're trying to figure things out, where our human brethren is going to crucify us, right? So I feel like I'm in that vulnerable place again until we shake loose all the things that can be shaken and find a solid ground in this place, right? Okay. So I'm not, just for those that have been wondering, I think Dana made a joke. But she said, Devon said, Pam going to end up chucking the Torah all together. It was funny, but I'm not going to do that. Not at this point. But we are filling in the information that we have, because clearly the information that we had up until this point, where before we even heard of Sumerian text, our information was still incomplete. Okay, so just in case you were wondering, we're filling in bits and pieces. So stay in class, y'all. We walking through this together. Pharaoh's dreams, Genesis 41. 2 full years later, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing on the bank of the Nile River. In his dream, he saw 7 fat, healthy cows come up out of the river and begin grazing in the marsh grass. Then he saw 7 more cows come up behind them from the Nile, but these were scrawny and thin. These cows stood beside the fat cows on the riverbank. Then a scrawny, thin cows ate the 7 healthy, fat cows. At this point in the dream, Pharaoh woke up, but he fell asleep again and had a second dream. This time, he saw 7 heads of grain, plump and beautiful, growing on a single stalk. Then 7 more heads of grain appeared, but these were shriveled and withered by the east wind. And these thin heads swallowed up the 7 plump, well-formed heads. Then Pharaoh woke up again and realized it was a dream. The next morning, Pharaoh was very disturbed by the dreams, so he called for all the musicians and wise men of Egypt. When Pharaoh told them his dreams, not one of them could tell him what they meant. Finally, the king's chief cupbearer spoke up. Today I have been reminded of my Today I have been reminded of my failure, he told Pharaoh. Some time ago, you were angry with the chief baker and me, and you imprisoned us in the palace of the captain of the guard. One night, the chief baker and I each had a dream. Each dream had its own meaning. There was a young Hebrew man with us in a prison who was a slave of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he told us what each of our dreams meant. And everything happened just as he had predicted. I was restored to my position as cupbearer, and the chief baker was executed and impaled on a pole. Pharaoh sent for Joseph at once, and he was quickly brought from the prison. After he shaved and changed his clothes, he went and stood before Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream last night, and no one here can tell me what it means. But I have heard that when you hear about a dream, you can interpret it. It is beyond my power to do this, Joseph replied, but God can tell you what it means and set you at ease. So Pharaoh told Joseph his dream. In my dream, he said, I was standing on the bank of the Nile River, and I saw 7 fat, healthy cows come up out of the river and begin grazing in the marsh grass. But then I saw 7 sick-looking cows, scrawny and thin, come up after them. I've never seen such sorry-looking animals in all the land of Egypt. These thin, scrawny cows ate the 7 fat cows, but afterward you wouldn't have known it, for they were still as thin and scrawny as before. Then I woke up. In my dream, I also saw 7 heads of grain, full and beautiful, growing on a single stalk. Then 7 more heads of grain appeared, but these were blighted, shriveled, and withered by the east wind, and the shriveled heads swallowed the 7 healthy heads. I told these dreams to the magicians, but no one could tell me what they mean. Joseph responded, both of Pharaoh's dreams mean the same thing. God is telling Pharaoh in advance what he is about to do. The 7 healthy cows and the 7 healthy heads of grain both represent 7 years of prosperity. The 7 thin, scrawny cows that came up later and the 7 thin heads of grain withered by the east wind represent 7 years of famine. This will happen just as I have described it, for God has revealed to Pharaoh in advance what he is about to do. The next 7 years will be a period of great prosperity throughout the land of Egypt, but afterward there will be 7 years of famine so great that all the prosperity will be forgotten in Egypt. Famine will destroy the land. This famine will be so severe that even the memory of the good years will be erased. As for having 2 similar dreams, it means that these events have been decreed by God, and he will soon make them happen. Therefore, Pharaoh should find an intelligent and wise man and put him in charge of the entire land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh should appoint supervisors over the land and let them collect 1/5 of all the crops during the 7 good years. Have them gather all the food produced in the good years that are just ahead and bring it to Pharaoh's storehouses. Store it away and guard it so there will be food in the cities. That way there will be enough to eat when the 7 years of famine come to the land of Egypt. Otherwise, this famine will destroy the land. Joseph made ruler of Egypt. Joseph's suggestions were well received by Pharaoh and his officials. So Pharaoh asked his officials, can we find anyone else like this man, so obviously filled with the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has revealed the meaning of the dreams to you, clearly no one else is as intelligent or wise as you are. You will be in charge of my court, and all the people will take orders from you. Only I, sitting on my throne, will have a higher rank than yours. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I can't put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt. I'm sorry, I read that completely wrong. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his hand and placed it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in fine linen clothing and hung a gold chain around his neck. Then he had Joseph ride in a chariot reserved for his second in command. And wherever Joseph went, the command was shouted, "Kneel down." So Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of all of Egypt. Hey, son. And Pharaoh said to him, "I am Pharaoh, but no one will lift a hand or foot in the entire land of Egypt without your approval." Then Pharaoh gave Joseph a new Egyptian name, Zaphenath-Paneah. He also gave him a wife, whose name was Asenath. She was the daughter of Potiphar, the priest of On. So Joseph took charge of the entire land of Egypt. He was 30 years old when he began serving in the court of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And when Joseph left Pharaoh's presence, he inspected the entire land of Egypt. As predicted, for 7 years, the land produced bumper crops. During those years, Joseph gathered all the crops grown in Egypt and stored the grain from the surrounding fields in the cities. He piled up huge amounts of grain like sand on the seashore. Finally, he stopped keeping records because there was too much to measure. During this time, before the first of the famine years, 2 sons were born to Joseph and his wife, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, the priest of On. If y'all don't turn that down in there. Thank you. Joseph named his oldest son Manasseh, for he said, "God has made me forget all my troubles and everyone in my father's family." Joseph named his second son Ephraim, for he said, "God has made me fruitful in this land of my grief." At last, the 7 years of bumper crops throughout the land of Egypt came to an end. Then the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had predicted. The famine also struck all the surrounding countries, but throughout Egypt there was plenty of food. Eventually, however, the famine spread throughout the land of Egypt as well. And when the people cried out to Pharaoh for food, he told them, "Go to Joseph and do whatever he tells you." So with severe famine everywhere, Joseph opened up the storehouses and distributed grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout the land of Egypt, and people from all around came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe throughout the world. Genesis 42, the last chapter for today. Joseph's brothers go to Egypt. When Jacob heard that grain was available in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why are you standing around looking at one another? I've heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy enough grain to keep us alive. Otherwise, we'll die." So Joseph's 10 older brothers went down to Egypt to buy grain, but Jacob wouldn't let Joseph's younger brother Benjamin go with them for fear some harm might come to him. So Jacob's sons arrived in Egypt along with the others to buy food, for the famine was in Canaan as well. Trina, hey. Since Joseph was governor of all Egypt and in charge of selling grain to all the people, it was to him that his brothers came. When they arrived, they bowed before him with their faces to the ground. Joseph recognized his brothers instantly, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. "Where are you from?" he demanded. "From the land of Canaan," they replied. "We've come to buy food." Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they didn't recognize him. And he remembered the dreams he'd had about them many years before. He said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see how vulnerable our land has become." "No, my lord," they exclaimed. "Your servants have simply come to buy food. We're all brothers, members of the same family. We are honest men, sir. We are not spies." "Yes, you are," Joseph insisted. "You have come to see how vulnerable our land has become." "Sir," they said, "there are actually 12 of us. We, your servants, are all brothers, sons of a man living in the land of Canaan. Our youngest brother is back there with our father right now, and one of our brothers is no longer with us." But Joseph insisted, "As I said, you are spies. This is how I will test your story. I swear by the life of Pharaoh that you will never leave Egypt unless your youngest brother comes here. One of you must go and get your brother. I'll keep the rest of you here in prison. Then we'll find out whether or not your story is true. By the life of Pharaoh, if it turns out that you don't have a younger brother, then I'll know that you are spies." So Joseph put them all in prison for 3 days. On the 3rd day, Joseph said to them, "I'm a God-fearing man. If you do as I say, you will live. If you are really honest men, choose one of your brothers to remain in prison. The rest of you may go home with grain for your starving families, but you must bring your youngest brother back to me. This will prove that you are telling the truth and you will not die." To this they agreed. Speaking among themselves, they said, "Clearly we're being punished because of what we did to Joseph long ago. We saw his anguish when he pleaded for his life, but we wouldn't listen. That's why we're in this trouble. Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy?" Reuben asked. "But you wouldn't listen, and now we have to answer for his blood." Of course, they didn't know that Joseph understood them, for he had been speaking to them through an interpreter. Now he turned away from them and began to weep. When he regained his composure, he spoke to them again. Then he chose Simeon from among them and had tied him up right before their eyes, Joseph then ordered his servants to fill the men's sacks with grain, but he also gave secret instructions to return each brother's payment at the top of his sack. He also gave them supplies for their journey home. So the brothers loaded their donkeys with the grain and headed for home. But when they stopped for the night and one of them opened his sack to get grain for his donkey, he found his money in the top of his sack. "Look," he exclaimed to his brothers, "my money has been returned. It's here in my sack." Then their hearts sank. Trembling, they said to each other, "What has God done to us?" When the brothers came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him everything that had happened to them. "The man who was governor of the land spoke very harshly to us," they told him. "He accused us of being spies, scouting out the land. But we said we are honest men, not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of one father. One brother is no longer with us, and the youngest is at home with our father in the land of Canaan." Then the man who was governor of the land told us, "This is how I will find out if you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me and take grain for your starving families and go home. But you must bring your youngest brother back to me. Then I will know that you are honest men and not spies. Then I will give you back your brother, and you may trade freely in the land." As they emptied out their sacks, there in each man's sack was a bag of money he had paid for the grain. The brothers and their father were terrified when they saw the bags of money. Jacob exclaimed, "You are robbing me of my children. Joseph is gone, Simeon is gone, and now you want to take Benjamin too? Everything is going against me." Then Reuben said to his father, "You may kill my 2 sons if I don't bring Benjamin back to you." Like, I don't know what they doggone reasoning is back in the day. Like, do the kids have no say so? Lot offered up his, "Look, I got 2 virgin daughters. You can take them. Just don't do nothing to the angels." What, Daddy? Then Reuben said to his father, "You may kill my 2. I'm like, "Look, Daddy, I don't know how we're going to work this out, but I ain't going to kill my sons." Like, can you imagine that reasoning today? I'm just saying. Then Reuben said to his father, "You may kill my 2 sons if I don't bring Benjamin back to you. I'll be responsible for him, and I promise to bring him back." But Jacob replied, "My son will not go down with you. His brother Joseph is dead, and he is all that I have left. If anything should happen to him on your journey, you will send this grieving white-haired man to his grave." Yeah, Trina, they keep offering up their children, right? Yeah, but we're going to get into it. I'm so excited about this. Okay, so I know it seemed like we went extra long, but it's really just like normal time. And we really just, look, we got done with all that and reading the extracurricular stuff today to fill you in about what really happened between Cain and Abel, right? I'm thinking, did I finish my thought that I was saying about them before I started reading? That they weren't necessarily offering sacrifices, right? So from our understanding in Genesis, like, okay, Abel was the keeper of the flocks and Cain was the tiller of the land. So from what we understand by just reading the Bible, we think, okay, the time of the week year coming where we offer our sacrifice. Okay, I'm going to take the first fruits of the land, all the fruits and veggies that I've harvested. I'm going to take them and offer them to God. And then we have the thought that Abel, since he was the shepherd, he took and he slaughtered the first fruits of his flock, right? That's the way the Bible has us thinking. When that's kind of like half-cocked information. It really is. Abel was the keeper or the shepherd, the tender of the flocks and stuff, but that's what his job was. That was his department. He was actually keeping he was in charge of the whole flock, the animal department, right? He was in charge of that, and Abel was in charge of the agriculture department, right? So there was a rival on whose job was more important. Kind of like in almost kind of like the story in the New Testament. Tell of us let me make sure I get that right. Hold on. Let me make sure I ain't mixing up the stories. It was the mom that said, hold on. I think I'm mixing the stories. I was about to tell you the story about the mom that prayed and when she asked JC if her two sons could both sit on the right hand. Okay, I'm mixing stories. Scratch that. There was a battle between whose department was better, right? Well, I tend to flock, so I'm better, so what I'm doing is more important. No, I'm the agriculturalist. I tend to land, I'm more important. They really need me. And so it was settled between the gods that, well, first of all, not that we're trying to decipher who's better and who's not, right? But if we want to be real about it, right? The water is the life-giving source for everything, even for the animals. So technically, what it's crazy because the story gets flipped around, right? The story gets flipped around. It's technically that who we would know as Cain in the Bible, it was because he was a tiller of the land and the water and everything. And Abel's flock, his flock was actually drinking the water that flowed. It seemed like the stories have been switched around, right? But if you go in and you read the full story, you will see. It's weird how it happens. So we're still trying to figure it out. But in the beginning, it really was not that Cain was greater, but because the water tended, it fell to his lot or whatever, because he was keeping the land and tilling. It kind of said that he was greater, so to speak. But when we get over into the Bible, it just kind of flips it where he becomes jealous of Abel. Let me make sure I'm saying it right. Hold on. Make sure I'm saying it right. Hold on. Hold on. Okay. Image points out that he made. Yep. But Enlil rejects the pleas of Image and reminds him, how could you compare yourself to your brother Enton? He tells him, for it is Enton who is in charge of the life-producing waters of all the lands. And water spells life, growth, and abundance. Imesh accepts the decision. Yeah, so it seems like the Bible switches the story around about who was who. Okay, but yeah, we'll get into that. But I hope me reading that brought a little bit more light. It wasn't that their offerings were rejected. It was really a dispute over whose job was more important, not because of what they offered. And so if you're looking at it from the perspective that the Bible gives it without the full information, it's like, okay, well, why wouldn't you accept my offering, but you accepted his offering? Did I not slaughter enough animals? Or did I not give you enough fruits and vegetables? Because it's like that. Did I not give you enough? But this is my department. Why wouldn't you accept mine? His department is something totally different, but you accept his. So it has us thinking, it got us all discombobulated in our thinking of what's really going on. So we kind of left to assume what's happening. And doctrines and all this type of stuff is built around this misguided, incomplete information. So. All right, so let's go to my big toe. Even in that, we are growing our big toe, right? Learning about the scriptures, but also learning about us as well, how we can grow and develop spiritually, actually tap in to the unseen realm and talk to Yah directly and on purpose and understand some things. Okay, chapter 13. Actually, I think this is the last chapter. No, 14. I'm sorry, it's 16. Then it's section 2. Okay. What time we at? An hour and 4 minutes. So we'll probably just read this one chapter today because it's a few pages long. And then we'll pick it back up tomorrow with chapter 14, where this kid is weird enough. And that's a really good chapter. Okay, chapter 13, page 97 in My Big Toe. And the title is Once Upon a Time, a Long, Long Time Ago. I have often told people who were inquiring about the possibility of learning what I have learned that if a boneheaded physicist like me could do it, anybody could. I could point out that I began from a cold start with no particular natural talent and learned everything from scratch the hard way. If I could, they could, and probably with less trouble. Dragging Spock from the deck of the Enterprise into the Twilight Zone with logic fully intact and uncompromised was a slow and tedious process. Most people could probably learn more quickly than I, even if they did not have the time or inclination to thoroughly immerse themselves as I did. The point made above remains fundamentally true. Anyone can learn what I have learned, but the picky fact is the previous statements contain one little white lie. My start wasn't as cold as I first thought. After I became familiar with the out-of-body experience and familiar with NPMR, non-physical matter reality, I realized that I had done this sort of thing before. Old memories returned, clear as crystal, now that I had the knowledge and perspective to understand them. It's like you're waking up, right? You're remembering who you are. I love this book. Look, okay. I'll read that again. The point made above remains fundamentally true. Anyone can learn what I have learned, but the picky fact is the previous statement contains one little white lie. My start wasn't as cold as I first thought. After I became familiar with the out-of-body experience and familiar with NPMR, I realized that I had done this sort of thing before. Old memories returned, clear as crystal, now that I had the knowledge and perspective to understand them. That sentence reminds me of what I heard my uncle say a lot, and I think he said, when a student is ready, the teacher will appear. Right? So just like he said here, old memories return old memories return clear as crystal now that I had the knowledge and perspective to understand them. So now when you're ready to move to another level and your perspective is in its proper place, you've learned a little bit more. Now the teacher appears to guide you through this next phase. Okay, now you're ready for this. Okay, you understand a little bit more, so we can take you just a little bit further, right? When the student is ready, the teacher appears. When I was between 5 and 8 years old, some friendly, non-physical beings helped me get out of body. It was not a random prank. They had a purpose. At first, I played with it, slipping out through the wall of my second-story bedroom and whooshing around the yard. They would get me out, and I would play and soar. I well remember the first time I found myself outside, floating a foot or two above the yard, gliding toward this monstrously thick hedge, and realizing that I did not know how to steer or stop. I grabbed my head and curled up into a ball, expecting a terrible and painful crash. To my utter amazement, I glided right through it and out the other side without interacting with it. Wow, neato. That was fun. Okay, so now remember when we started the book in the introduction, he talked about these little small triangles pointed to the right. He called those like side stories, but calls them asides. Okay, so here's our first one. A short aside follows to help you find the proper perspective. Most children, particularly those younger than seven, have spontaneous, fully conscious, out-of-body experiences. Their parents tell them it's just a meaningless dream and they forget about it. These experiences are usually non-threatening and fun for the kids. You may recall some of your out-of-body experiences if your memory is good and the experiences were dramatic. Most adults have spontaneous out-of-body voyages as well, but they are typically not fully conscious and therefore do not qualify as experiences. Out-of-body as a phenomenon or happening is much more mundane and common than it is strange. OOBE, out of body experience, seems strange because the limitations we place on our out of body experiences seem strange because the limitations we placed on our concepts of consciousness and reality force us to reject many of the mental functions that are naturally available to our species and to misunderstand the purpose of the mental activities that take place while we are asleep. It is as if we are born with 2 good legs but never learned to walk, because the ability to crawl precedes the ability to walk, and because everybody is completely adapted to crawling around within a social structure that stigmatizes non-crawling non-conformists as wackos. So he said, basically, we're born learning how to do something, and by default, everybody technically is crawling around in the spirit. And those of us that are actually walking, actually having out-of-body experiences on a normal, projecting in the astral realm, which should be normal, we're considered wackos because everybody is content with just crawling around, right? That's what he just said in a nutshell. I'll read it again. Most adults have spontaneous out-of-body voyages as well, but they are typically not fully conscious and therefore do not qualify as experiences. Turn it down, y'all. Out-of-body as phenomenon or happening is much more mundane and common than it is strange. Out-of-body experiences seem strange because the limitations we place on our concepts of consciousness and reality force us to reject many of the mental functions that are naturally available to our species and to misunderstand the purpose of the mental activities that take place while we are asleep. It is as if we are born with 2 good legs, but never learn to walk, because the ability to crawl precedes the ability to walk, and because everybody is completely adapted to crawling around within a social structure that stigmatizes non-crawling non-conformists as wackos. And that's the end of the aside. Hey, what does that smell? What do y'all have?
Nothing.
Is that? Put that up. Is that cereal?
No.
What do you have?
No. We just had ice cream.
That's probably what I smell. Okay. Eventually, these helpful beings and I became conversant. How can I do that? Get out of body whenever I want to. I wanted to know. They taught me several techniques. I practiced diligently and got results. Each time I would lose consciousness for a few seconds, regain consciousness in the out-of-body state. In the out-of-body state. I want to be conscious the entire time, I complained, thinking that I would prefer to be more self-sufficient. You will not like it, they said. We black you out for a short time during the transition to make the process more comfortable. I want to do it anyways, I protested. They finally agreed. I immediately started applying one of the techniques they had taught me. As the here and now began to fade away into oblivion, a much fuller and richer awareness took root and began to blossom. Abruptly, my body began to vibrate. The amplitude of the vibrations steadily grew larger and larger. My body had become plastic and was being shaken like a loose canvas awning, flapping in a strong wind. Whoa. Yes.
Can you tell Justin why you let me be on the TV, because you've been on the TV for a long time. He never lets anyone play up there.
First of all, slow down and enunciate your words, son. Joshua, how about all of y'all just cut it off and just use your hand device? Yeah, how about we do that?
Josh, once he's off the TV, he doesn't let me on the TV.
Joshua, he got those. Use your handset. Cut my TV off. Everybody use the handset. Get out, son. Whoa. The violence of the oscillations had startled me. I immediately returned to a normal physical reality, lying still on my bed. Okay, I said. Let's try that again. So what's happening is he's trying to astral project himself, right? He's trying to just take control of the outer body experiences they had taught him. His non physical friends, or we would call them, if we had the interactions, we would probably call them angels, right? So his unseen friends showed him a couple different techniques on how you just gonna pop out of body, or astral project, if you like that term better, right? And so he said, when we do it, we just black you. He said they black you out for a quick second, or you kind of just like fall asleep real quick, and then when you open your eyes, voila, you're out of body. But he was like, I don't want y'all to do that. I want to do it myself, because you can clearly do it yourself, right? If you go looking on YouTube, people give you all different kind of techniques, right? A few of them work that I've tried. I was like, yeah, let me try. It's kind of a rough ride. I like it has been happening before, where I'm just out, right? Here's what's funny. Look, I started laughing because I was like, you know what? I need to just follow the natural way of doing this. I was about to say something. Hold on. Let me just go back to the book. Whoa. The violence of the oscillations had startled me. I immediately returned to a normal physical reality, lying still on my bed. Okay, I said, let's try that again. The same sequence repeated itself several times. I would pop back into physical reality after the oscillations became large, fast, and violent. Okay, I said, you do it. I was almost instantly awake in the out of body state. They won. I never bothered them anymore about doing it my way. Now I realized that I had been had. Those violent oscillations were not necessary. They simply did not want me to become too independent. I noticed that when I was out of body, I was an adult, not a little kid. That was neat. When I came back, I was a kid again. I hung out with my non-physical mentors almost every night. They loved to teach and I loved to learn. We had a great time. One night, my adventures in inner space took an unexpected turn that subsequently left nothing the same. Unknown to me, phase 1 was over and phase 2 was about to begin. Without forewarning, I was set up to begin a battery of exams that would determine the quality of my being. How evolved an entity was I? How evolved an entity was I? How much had I learned and grown with the help of my mentors? What was the limit of my understanding? The questions, or more accurately, situations, presented me with multiple choices that became progressively more difficult. The first question was mostly verbal. Would you rather have this treasure? I got a picture, or learn something new? I read that again. Would you rather have this treasure? I got a picture, or learn something new? The answer was obvious. Knowledge was far more valuable than goods. It was so blatantly obvious, in fact, that I had decided to make a joke. Just give me the loot, I said sarcastically in my best gangster voice. I can always learn something new on my own. At that time, I did not realize that this was the first question on a long and especially serious test. My world exploded. Bzz, wrong. I was instantly transported to an entirely different place. He failed the first question. He's not ready. I heard someone exclaim with surprise and disappointment. Send him back, someone else shouted. He failed the test. Test, I said, feeling a little like Alice at the Queen's castle. I didn't know this was a test. I was joking. I knew the answer. I thought someone was playing around with me, making up goofy choices. So I was being goofy to get them back. The panel of judges that were to administer and evaluate my exam slipped back in time, inspected my mind for true motivations. The panel of judges that were to administer and evaluate my exam slipped back in time, inspected my mind for my true motivations. They evidently weren't expecting a smart aleck. A smart aleck. They evidently weren't expecting a smart aleck. My advocates approached the bench, vouching for my readiness. I was relieved that somebody was taking my side. I did not know who they were, but I was glad they were there. The tone had suddenly become heavy, as if something terribly important was going on. Two judges said, "Failed is failed. Send him home," while the other three said, "Continue the test. Let's see what he can do." A higher level judge was consulted. It was decided I was to be given a second chance. It was obvious there was some serious hardball politics involved that I did not understand. The tension was thick as tar. These judges did not like each. Hold on. These judges did not like each. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. The tension was thick as tar. These judges did not like each other, and there was a strong competitive hostility between the two groups. I knew this was very serious business, but I didn't know what I was doing in the middle of it. It was clear that whatever was going on was important to me and important to others for reasons I did not understand. I was thankful for the chance to show what I actually knew. My advocates, who had evidently been working with me for a long time to get me ready for this first test, were almost hold on. I'm sorry, I had to sound this word out, y'all. I don't remember this word being said. I remember this test. Hold on. Okay, I'm sorry. I had to pronounce my words. Okay. My advocates, who had evidently been working with me for a long time, had to get me ready for this test. I'm still reading it wrong. I'm sorry. My advocates, who had evidently been working with me for a long time to get me ready for this first test, were almost apoplectic. Apoplectic. I'll look it up later. Their relief at my second chance was immense, but they remained worried. It was as if their most important plans, careers, and reputations hung in the balance, and there I was, a somewhat unpredictable, embodied, bone-headed human. Instantly, I was back in the test space. The first question was repeated. It was a precise replay of what I had previously experienced. I surmised that this was a fixed or standardized set of questions, and they had to restart the series from the beginning, even though the first question and its answer had been revealed. Question after question, situation after situation was put before me. I evidently did well, because when you get one wrong, it's over. There were problems that tested ego and desire with sexual enticements, some of which were bizarre. There were choices between helping others and pursuing your personal path. They played to my emotions and ego, tried to instill fear, and probed how well I truly understood love. Eventually, I was clueless as how to approach the problem. It's almost like y'all watch, I love this series, the Divergent series. I actually listened, I ain't gonna say read. I actually listened to the entire book series. So it's kind of like I read, but I just listened to it. I listened to the entire series before the movie came out, right? So remember how they was going through those aptitude tests to find out which faction you would be a part of. And even after you got to your faction, there was still battery tests that they did. It's kind of like this. That's what this reminds me of, the test that they're giving. And even some of my dreams, I remember one, I was like, that definitely had to have been a test. So some dreams I have repeating, I was like, clearly I must have failed it. Once I began to understand some of this stuff, and then I started having repeating dreams again, things that I used to have when I was younger, I'm like, holy crap. Now that I understand this, so it will repeat a couple times, and then I wouldn't have it again. Once I understood some of this stuff, I'm like, now, so I began to look at my dreams just a little bit different, because my dreams are definitely informative, right? They give me warnings about different things that could happen, could possibly happen, places I need to look. So I'm careful about my dreams and what they're actually trying to reveal to me. Look, eventually, I was clueless as how to approach the problem. I went with my best guess, and the test abruptly ended. I was back in my body, I was back in my body, turning into a young kid again though my mental space retained its adult nature while in the altered state. Jeez, I thought, what was that about? As a kid, I often retained a clear memory of what happened for a short while at least, but I did not relate to it. At least 5 times since then, I have been hauled in front of panels of judges because of my unpredictable, quirky human nature. Thus far, I have prevailed. I must, as they say, have a rap sheet a mile long. Some 23 years later, the event that had jogged this childhood memory occurred. I was at Bob's house one weekend afternoon when he began to comment on a training exercise I had been involved in the night before. Regular training sessions designed to develop my effectiveness within non-physical matter reality began again in earnest shortly after I resumed sentience within the larger reality. Bob had been in the audience watching my performance. Okay, so if you missed what was just said, so this memory he's sharing with us that he had when he was younger, all these out of body experiences, and then his invisible mentors who was training him and taking him through these batteries of tests. When he got to that last question, everything ended for years. But it seemed like it began to pick back up when he got into this lab, right? So he had enough experience throughout the years since he was younger to develop some understanding about certain things. And it seems like the test that had stopped when he was younger began to pick back up when he got into this lab, and they was doing these tests about out of body. Okay. Some 23 years later, the event that had jogged this childhood memory occurred. I was at Bob's house one weekend afternoon when he began to comment on a training exercise I had been involved in the night before. Regular training sessions designed to develop my effectiveness within non-physical matter reality began again in earnest shortly after I resumed sentience within the larger reality. Bob had been in the audience watching my performance. Hey, guys, calm down in there. Josh. Yeah, y'all loud. Thank you. Bob had been in the audience watching my performance. He was telling me about what I had done. I was surprised. Not that he could know, but because usually he was not involved in my out-of-body experiences. He knew every move I made and started kidding me about a show-off display I had performed at the successful end of a particularly difficult series, the way football players sometimes dance in the end zone. We were laughing about it. When he told me about an especially difficult test he himself had recently been given, he started to describe it. After he described the third test in this long series, I stopped him. I knew something was up. Now it was my opportunity to puzzle him. My experiences of 23 years ago had come flooding back in a gushing torrent as he described the first 3 tests. I made him wait until I had collected my thoughts. I told him what the 4th test was. His jaw dropped. I had never seen Bob speechless before. I described the 5th test. He was dumbfounded. We went through the rest of the test, alternating who would give the description of the presented problems. Oddly enough, we had bombed out at the same place, but with different answers. Evidently, neither one was right, or that was the last question. Without a doubt, that was a standardized test. Since that time, I have run into several others who have experienced some sequence of events while in non-physical matter reality that were identical in form, function, and content to the events I experienced. Back in the early 1950s, immediately after that first big test, I was put in regular training classes. Every night for almost a year, I was run through situations, given jobs to do, and further tested by my trainers. I was never told what I was being trained for. I worked hard. After that first major evaluation almost turned catastrophic, I was serious. It was more work than fun. I was learning to control my mind, to manipulate non-physical energy, to make right choices for the right reasons, to think fast and act fast. I was learning how to follow directions and to break old PMR or physical matter reality conceptual habits. I was becoming effective and efficient in NPMR, non-physical matter reality. I was learning focus and control. Eventually, after much practice, I began to feel competent and strong, like an athlete ready to walk into the arena. One night, there was no more training. I would not resume the effort until some 20 years later, but I didn't know that then. And that is where we're going to pause at today, my beautiful people. We're at an hour and 30 minutes. So I'll give a quick recap. You know what? It's only a page and a half. It's like 2 pages. Let me read this so you will know what happens. That way I don't have to give such a big recap. Okay, I'm going to read this. Okay. So he just described what happened, and it's going to tell us why his training had to stop at that point until he got a little bit older and he was actually a nuclear physicist. Hey, babe, I thought you were Jeremiah.
Oh, wow.
But I tell you, y'all, from the side, y'all look exactly the same. I really thought it was him because he just come down here and take the trash out. Okay, the title of chapter 14 is This Kid is Weird Enough. It'll take me about 5 minutes and we'll be done. I did not know it, but my learning time in the non-physical was about to come to an end for a long time. My mind would typically shift into adult mode as I drifted on the boundary between awake and asleep. It had been a week or more since my instructors had been by to take me to class, and for some reason, I had not gone on my own. Like, he couldn't just go out of body on his own. It would seem like it wasn't happening, right? Okay. It had been a week or more since my instructors, the angels or his invisible friends, right? It had been a week or more since my instructors had been by to take me to class, and for some reason, I had not gone on my own. It was time to get back to it. I began to slip out of body unassisted by my instructors. Now it was easy. I wondered where my teachers were. Why hadn't they come? Oh, well, this would be fun, I thought with great anticipation. I paused for a moment. Where should I go? What should I do? My training had been highly structured. I wasn't used to this much freedom. Perhaps they want to see what I would do on my own, I thought. I felt they were probably watching. Rather suddenly, someone stopped me cold in my tracks, forcefully shoving me back into my body. Hey, I said, what are you doing? You can't do that to me. Yes, I can. The reply came back in a firm, authoritative tone. In fact, he continued, I have been instructed to seal off this passage. You will no longer be allowed to exit your body. I'm like, oh, this is getting good. I'm like, what? They can do that? Clearly, of course they can do that. They control that realm. Hold on. Hey, I said, what are you doing? You can't do that to me. Yes, I can. The reply came back in a firm, authoritative tone. In fact, he continued, I have been instructed to seal off this passage. You will no longer be allowed to exit your body. If this is a test, I don't get it, I thought to myself as I struggled to find the correct response. It was not a test. There were 2 of them, but only one spoke. Workers sent to close and seal the door on my experiences in non-physical matter reality. Are you sure you have the right person? I challenged. This must be some mistake. I waited while he checked out the possibility. No mistake, he said, looking at his work order. You're the one. But why? I pleaded. You're a kid, aren't you? He said. Yes, but just my body, I replied. That has never been a problem before. So you remember, he was a child when all of these out-of-body experiences was happening to him. So when it came to a stop, this is what they said. Look, let me go back. No mistake, he said, looking at his work order. You're the one. But why? I pleaded. Excuse me, I'm going to get a sip of water. That sounds disgusting. Sorry. Sorry. Okay. All right. Okay. Are you sure you have the right person? I challenged. This must be some mistake. I waited while he checked out that possibility. No mistake, he said, looking at his work order. You're the one. But why? I pleaded. You're a kid, aren't you? He said. Yes, but just my body, I replied. There has never been a problem before. You have completed what you were doing, he said, matter-of-factly, and now they don't want you to grow up too weird. You know what I mean? You need to grow up and act like a normal kid, develop a healthy personality. Too much of this other world experience would make you strange and not fit comfortably into the world you will grow up in. I can handle it, I protested. I haven't had any problems so far. You have no choice, he said emphatically. Trust me. It may be easy now because you are only one. It may be easy now because you are in one reality at a time. But as you get older, it will become a problem for you to juggle multiple realities simultaneously. I did trust him, and I intuitively knew that he was right. I also had no choice. He was much more powerful and knowledgeable than I was. I knew I could not slip thoughts into his mind. I didn't try. Will I ever be allowed to get back out again? Will you ever unseal this door? I asked hopefully. I don't know, he said flatly as if it were none of his business. Can you find out for me? I pleaded. Please look and see. I don't think they were supposed to do that sort of thing, but I must have sounded desperate and sad. Neither worker said anything, but they both looked far away into the distance. It was a long and intense look. Suddenly, they both gave a loud gasp as if they were simultaneously surprised and shocked. They were momentarily stunned and remained quiet for a few seconds. What is it? I asked. What did you see? I strained to see the picture that was in their minds, but couldn't. Will I ever get through this door again? Tell me, please. Both workers now had the demeanor of someone who has inadvertently blundered into something they were not supposed to know about. Both had become tightly focused on what they were doing and now non-communicative and in a hurry. They glanced at each other with concern. I could sense that they were more than a little worried. I could feel their feelings and could pick up a few surface thoughts, but the startling events they had witnessed were securely and purposely unavailable. How could the information they had inadvertently found out about my future put them in a jam?
Nice birthday cake.
Chill. I was dumbfounded. My concern and overall puzzlement was growing rapidly. They had a sense of impending personal jeopardy. After some quick discussion, they briefed higher authority on the situation. A few others who were somehow connected were brought in. Security was tight. Decisions were made quickly. A plan B was set into motion, and everyone but the two workers immediately disappeared. The problem was not that the two workers had broken a rule by looking ahead for me. That was a relatively small issue that could be and was quickly forgiven. The problem was that now they knew something they were not supposed to know. I was perplexed. I could not even make a wild guess at what was causing all the concern. What did you see? What is the problem? What's going on? I asked the workers in a quiet and serious tone, trying to sound as if I were a team member who had, for some unavoidable reason, just happened to miss the preceding conversation. They took a few seconds to finish what they were doing and then slowly turned toward me, paused, and stared with quizzical amazement for a few moments. They looked at each other for a brief moment and then back at me. Saying nothing, they slammed the door hard. I was shut out. As it turned out, I was not shut out entirely. There were no more out-of-body experiences, to be sure, but I still had friends. In my mind, I could easily communicate telepathically with my guides. I did not call them that, but that was their function. All right, beautiful people. And that is where we will pause today. So we'll pick this back up, and it's going to give us more detail. And if y'all read ahead, y'all already know what's coming. All right, so we'll pause right here. So we read chapters 13 and 14. It's getting good. And to me, it's kind of lining up with what we're reading a little bit. We ain't going to get into that detail yet. We just got to see this thing out. Hold on. Nope, that's wrong. Let's see. 13. I put it wrong. I'm sorry. I'm writing the chapters down. 13 and 14. Okay. All right, beautiful people. I hope y'all enjoyed the reading for today. We're at an hour and 40 minutes. I know some people had to go to work. I started late. But anyway, we done now. To the baby. Is she down here? All right, y'all. It is Wednesday, January the 26th, 2022. Day number 14 of year 4 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets. And of the 4-year consecutive day count, day 1032. We read Genesis 40 through 42, and we read chapters 13 and 14 of My Big Toe. I will share the link to this where we got the information about Cain and Abel. If you want to get it or read through it or whatever, right? I think we're going to add the whole thing to the list as we start going through the Sumerian text. I'm just not exactly sure where, or maybe I might just continue to read through it and just pull out some of the pertinent information just to kind of give you quick updates to fill in different bits and pieces of the story throughout the Torah, right? In the Old Testament. I don't know. We'll see. But we definitely going to read through this next one. We're going to read the whole thing, all 14 of them tablets. Starting on, I said Saturday because we got the last 2 chapters of Genesis, chapter 49 and 50. I'm going to try not to intertwine so many of my shenanigans and stories simply so we can get started reading it. All right. So that should be a fairly short day. Then we're going to get through the reading of My Big... should we do reading of My Big Toe? I think we're going to read My Big Toe before we get into the Sumerian text. That way it can be like the last thing that we're reading on Saturday. Yeah, that's what I think we'll do. We'll see. All right, but anyway, beautiful people. Bella ain't came down here yet. She might have went back upstairs. All right, so with that being said, I got to go. I actually have an appointment. I got to get out of here for. Got to go wait this long line. I hate when I had to go down to the VA office. They getting better about their time limit and wait and stuff. Okay, but that's why I gotta go. Gotta go down to Veterans Affairs and take care of some business. All right. I'm not thinking it. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and do the blessing since Bella not here. She ain't hear me, so we can go ahead and end this. We gotta go. All right, blessing is found in Numbers chapter 6, verses 22 through 27. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron and unto his son, saying, On this wise ye shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, Yahuwah will kneel before us presenting gifts and will guard us with a hedge of protection. Yahuwah will illuminate the wholeness of his being towards us, bringing order, and he will provide us with love, sustenance, and friendship. Yahuwah will lift up the wholeness of his being and look upon us, and he will set in place all we need to be whole and complete. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. God darn it, is somebody not driving down the street ran into somebody's trash can? That's why I look. They must have looked down at their phone or something. Not though, ran into the their neighbor trash can with their car. That's why I paused. I was about to say something. Let me finish this. Oh, geez, people, y'all need to be paying attention when y'all ride down the residential streets. Don't be distracted by your phones. All right, beautiful people. That's it. We're going to go ahead and get out of here. I think I ain't had that many questions today. Dana, did she come in? I did see your text. I'm going to respond to it. Okay, I think that was it, though. Angela, shalom. I didn't see you come in. Angela, hey, girl, hey, shalom, over on Facebook. Okay, Damien. Okay, all right, y'all. That's it. I'll see y'all tomorrow morning. I'm going to be on time, bright and early, 7:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.